We are back again, more fun stuff in the wonderful world of Randy at the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Aren't you lucky you're here? But you know, you might have missed it if you didn't press that subscribe button. So you need to do that right away. Just press this, it's free. It costs you nothing. Press subscribe, and then every time one of our great new videos comes out, you get alerted, you get notified so you don't miss out on all the good fun. Okay, I know you're gonna take care of that for me. Okay, we're over here now in one of my many secret locations where we have more stuff, good stuff. And this was set up to be an arcade, as many of the places I've done. You know, I hate to think of how many arcades have actually set up to be open that for one reason or another never got open. It's just like, that's part of the course. I mean, it's not one or two or three. I mean, it's happened a good half a dozen times, and some of the locations I still maintain, hoping that I will get them open, like Randyland itself, but others, maybe I had to move out because I was paying rent and then the options weren't there, and eventually it wasn't going to open, and you know, it just didn't make any sense anymore. But as long as there's hope, I keep it intact and I try to do what I want. Then things get a little disarrayed because you're working on stuff and things get shifted around, or you need a piece for another arcade and you end up bringing another piece over here and you swap them out and they end up in your way and you got to climb over everything in order to get to it. But that's the fun stuff for us people who love to collect games, is climbing over other games in order to get to them. So right now, if you can see really closely with your video how sweating I am, it's probably about 125 degrees in here because it's not open and everything is hot and the sun is blaring down on the roof and just making sweltering conditions for us, but nothing stops us from doing another great video. So you can sit there at home in air condition with your feet up and your iced tea and enjoy the fun. Isn't that fun? So what else can you do on a really hot day but think about exerting yourself even more by punching the bag to see how strong you are? People like to do this all the time. And you know, I was never really big into punching the bag. I did it once or twice when I was a little kid to see what the big guys were doing. And I hurt my hand and I'm like, who wants to do this? I mean, that is fun. But it's a macho thing, you know, it's not something you want to do necessarily by yourself, but you want to show off for your friends. Oh, I'm a big guy, or I'm going to hit the bag, you know, and then everybody's like, oh, isn't he wonderful? Oh, so he gets the good date because he hit the bag as strong as he could. Well, punching bags have been around for a really long time. They go back to the really early penny arcades. You would pull down the bag and hit the bag, and I have one like that that's not real old, but it was manufactured after that type of situation where you pull down the bag and you hit it, it goes to release, and it comes up on a chain. The problem with that one is, I think people in the 1920s had a little more smarts, so they would know to hit the bag straight. So on its free-hanging chain, the bag would fly up and hit the proper area for it to register. But in today's world, people want to stand at the side of it instead of hitting it straight. They want to hit it sideways, and the bag flies sideways and it misses the sensors completely, and then the bag can fly back and hit you in the face, which usually knocks some sense into people if there's any sense left in there to begin with. But if you do it properly and you hit the sensor, what happens is it causes a snap release to pull that chain back up into the unit so that the bag flies up into the top and then it can't hit you in the face. But when I was a kid, 60s, 70s, the main punching bags you saw in the amusement parks and on the boardwalks were made by Zamperla. And it's an Italian company, and they're mainly known for making rides. Yeah, really good rides too. Very well manufactured games, heavy, thick, steel, really made for heavy use and transporting. So those games were around for a long time, but then as we got into more modern technology, the punching bags also increased their technology, and they actually became a little bit more user-friendly for the operators because they became lighter weight in manufacturing. So how did they do that? Because they became computerized. So with the digital scoring, when you hit the bag, the digits start counting, and they usually count up fast. Some of them move slow depending upon the manufacturer, the programming, and how dynamic they want to be with their programming to make it look like a big deal. But it's really all done with really 2 hits of one sensor. So what happens is, when you hit that bag, the carriage will swing up, but there's a finger on the carriage, and the finger will go through an optic. And the split second that the optic is triggered on and off tells the computer all it needs to know as far as how hard you hit the bag. So is it really how hard you hit the bag? Not exactly, because the computer also has in its software programming probably little aspects that the programmer generated to make the scores vary a little more and how many times you're playing it. But it is definitely not all about just how hard you hit that bag, because there's only so much you can do with an optic. The optic sees it go by. It knows within split seconds, within microseconds, how fast it passed. But speed is not necessarily how hard you hit it, because some small guys who are really wiry, they can really swing their body real fast and they can get a quick hit where it goes by the optics real fast, even though you don't hear that big bang as the bag hits the frame and goes into there, and it sounds like a really big guy hit the bag. So the big guys are not always the strongest on the punching bag scoring, on the computerized punching bags. But on the Zamperlas, they were pure. It really was all about how hard you hit the bag. Why? Because there were no computers in there simulating or trying to create an effect. It was really based upon your strength. And really simple concept. When you hit that bag, the bag would fly up into the top of the machine and it would hit a bar, which would actually cause a lever, because you would hit up and there was a pivot, so this would come down. So when the bag would hit up, the lever would go down, and the lever would push a rod down with a snap onto a finger that would flip a spinning wheel. Make sense? So the harder that finger hits the spinning wheel is going to spin faster. And it's purely done upon how hard you hit it. Here's the scoring unit. Now, it is not digital at all. You do not have any big LEDs that's going to count up your score from 1 to 999. This is like a giant clock. And you have your finger, which is an arrow, which is going to point to your scores. So when you start the game, the arrow goes back towards the beginning. And then when you hit it, the finger inside is going to flip that wheel and cause that to spin around as far as it'll go. So it's purely done upon how hard you hit the bag. There's nothing else in order to change that. This poor machine has been sitting down here. He was on the boardwalk last season, so he moved down here. So I'm kind of guessing it might work, it might not work. It hasn't been tested since it got moved, and things get moved, so we might even lose his quarters. But we have it set for 50 cents. So if we put our 50 cents in there and we push our start button, theoretically, we should get movement on the arrow. Ah, it still works. Look at that. Of course. Now, the bag came down. Now, here's a funny thing. I laugh about this all the time. The start button is on the top of the machine, up here. Now, I got machines all around me, so it's difficult for me. But after you put your money in, you step back, you look up, you push the start button. The bag comes down. People all the time, every day I'm open in the arcade, they come in, they tell me, oh, I put money in the machine, it's not working. So I kind of use deductive reasoning. Where did they come from in the arcade? If they came from the front, I'll say, were you playing the punching bag? Yeah, I put my money in it. The bag didn't come down. I say, I bet you didn't push the start button on top of the machine above your head. And they're like, no, I pushed the button. Because it has a button on the digital machines. There's a button there for selecting the type of game. This doesn't have. And of course, they'll push that button. But if you push a button here to start the game, what will happen? The bag will come down and hit you in the face. So obviously, the start button can't be here because the bag will come down and hit you right in the face and you'll have a bloody mouth. So they make you back up to push the button on the top and the bag comes down safely. But there's a lot of people, I mean a lot of people, who do not look up. So they expect the bag just to come down. Well, it doesn't happen. Then they call me and I'm like, oh, they tell me they pushed the button. They pushed the button. So I come out and I go, push the button, and the bag comes down. Surprise, they didn't really push the button. All right, now, when you hit this bag, and I'm in no position to hit the bag, so I'm gonna try to give this a push. When you hit this bag, should make my needle fly, and you gotta do it really hard. But before I do this, since we don't have any more quarters, right? We don't have any more quarters. I've noticed that this is the one unit that when I purchased it was not complete. How do I know? You see this board up here? This is a Randy replacement. Okay, this is not original. This should be, if it was original, a steel bar, and here would be a flattened piece of sheet metal that was rather thick gauge, so the bag would come up and it would hit it. This is what it's all about, okay? You see this? When this bag flies up and hits this, that is gonna push that lever. You see the lever on the other side? That's gonna push that rod down. That's going to work the mechanisms behind it. So, before we hit the bag, because the bag won't be down again without any coins, I'm going to just hit this board, and we'll see if we get any action. You ready? You watching me hit the board? All right. I got all the way over here to 220. You see that? Now I hit it pretty good. I also got it stuck up in the air because I'm not a bag that has a stopper here that would have prevented that, so I'm pulling it back down again. All right, this stopper would prevent the bag from going up too far. So now it's already in its position, it's not gonna move, but if we punch the bag, it would hit that board, hit the lever, and swing your arm. Now in the back, we might be able to get in there to see, do I have my keys here? I do have my keys, aren't you lucky? It's always fun peeking inside. Well, first of all, we have a lot of really bright LED replacement light bulbs, because regular light bulbs, the vibration makes them break all the time. Now, you'll see these clips. This probably had one of those round fluorescent light bulbs that was in there, like your old kitchen where grandma used to live, and it would have a round fluorescent light bulb. But fluorescent light bulbs don't last forever, and the vibration causes them to fall off their mounts and they break, and that's what it is. This is actually your coin unit. It's really pretty interesting. This is a single coin unit, which I'm actually not using probably correctly. I'm looking at this correct. It's bypassed by me because these are a real pain in the neck, and they're set up for the way they were made at the time. This one probably gave you 2 or maybe 3 shots for maybe a dime or a quarter, which, you know, current values for these games, it's either a buck for 1 hit, or in my instance, I gave you 2 hits for $1, so 50 cents would give you 1. So in order to do that, over here, that's all bypassed into some Randy relays, okay, and we have obviously reached a point there that it stopped it. So this is going up here, and the wires are going down to your coin mech there, and it's controlling the game through this, and really nothing over here is being functioning. I'm tapped into one, probably a micro switch connector that used to be there on the apparatus here that used to tell the machine to go on, so that's not working at all. It's all bypassed. But over here is where we're talking about the rod that comes down when you hit the bar, comes down like this, and if you can see from this side, this is where it all happens. This rod just pushes down and it hits the finger. Now, the finger isn't there because I hit it and the finger's someplace over here. So we'll reset it with a solenoid, and it came back, and here I move the spring. You see the finger? Right, there's the finger. That rod will come down and hit it, all right? So we'll go back down again. So when I hit that, it'll send this spinning, but obviously I'm not hitting it with a snap, so I didn't go very far. But if I were hitting it hard, that would spin all the way around. Now here you have molded into the plate actuators for the micro switches, which is actually telling the machine how far you got, which is lighting lights here, which would appear in the front to give you different levels. So if I back it up, you see the lights going off. So if you hit the first level, you get 1 light, then the next light, the next light, the next light, and further. I hit the jackpot. So I really went to the top on the thing. That's a Zamperla noisemaker. Now, they don't all have that because that was probably an add-on, and some of them are really obnoxiously loud. Yeah, this is my blue one. This is actually the oldest one. That's pretty interesting. The faceplate on this, look how small the actual arrow is compared to the other one. Isn't that interesting? Just this little tiny arrow here. And you got all this around just with a little bit of a picture. And of course, same idea where it spins and comes down. This one, interesting. It has 2 start buttons instead of 1. So this machine used to run on dual coins. And as I look over here, I have one of the coin entrances blocked off. That was obviously a dime, and this one was a quarter. So this one probably gave you 1 hit for a dime, 3 hits for a quarter. So if you put a dime in, you had to start it with the dime button. If you put the quarters in, you had to start it with the quarter button. I'm sure that made for a lot of confusion with the operators. Oh, I pushed the button. Well, did you push the right button? What did you put in? So we're running it on 50 cents, so I've obviously switched over to the left button for whatever reason. Probably that's the first one you would come to, and I figured that would make more sense. I'm surprised I didn't make either button push it. Maybe I did. I don't remember. I fixed it a long time ago. I probably paralleled them out. Come on. There we go. Obviously, this one's been modified, but yes, here you have, interestingly enough, look, you've got the round fluorescent, but this is an LED replacement. So this is the same thing as the fluorescent would be, but this is an LED one, and it's holding it to your clips that were on the other ones. This same unit that appeared in the other one as the coin mechanism that I bypassed, this is a dual. There's 2, because one was for dime, one was for quarter. And you actually had gears that were in position that this would pull in with the solenoid. I hesitate to do it because it's obviously in the right position for the machine to work right now because I have it bypassed, so I don't want to do it, but this solenoid would pull in and cause the gear to turn, moving the micro switches into the proper positions as you go. And then of course we have my controls over here, which are actually running the game for the coins involved. You have your same type of apparatus, your same type of rod coming down to hit it on the thing, and it goes around. Ooh, this one has a nice bell. That must be a Randy bell. Now, I didn't move it very far, and I'm looking at my lights. I probably went further with that. Let's see if we go further. All right, maybe I gotta go further fast, because it probably has a timeout. So I have 2 sound effects here. I have a bell that I added for an intermediate hit, and then a larger hit, which then transfers over to the siren also, and then it has a timeout that'll turn it out, which is why you gotta spin it faster. So when you hit it, it spins fast. The reset brings it back down. Sounds like a bicycle wheel. Did you hear that with the pistons going around? It probably uses a similar thing from Italian. These are made in Italy. They probably use Italian bikes. Pretty interesting, that. And trying to see. Oh, I wonder, is the other orange one here? I'm looking. Oh, it's over here. It's over here. Yeah. Unfortunately, our wire doesn't go this far. But the reason I find this really interesting is they tried to get fancy with the face plates on these. And what they did, this is probably the latest model one I have. The pointer that spins around when you hit it, you can actually spin it around more than once. Isn't that an interesting feature? So you can pass the start and go around again. Let's see if we can do this. Now, I'm gonna try to turn it by hand. So when you hit this, all right, you're going around and you pass the top, you're going around again. This is where the really high scores are, down into the further aspects of the unit. It's so hard for me to even turn it right now with my hand because that's how hard you gotta hit it. But when it goes back, it goes around 2 things. And your dial is graduated in 2 ways, okay? You have your 0 going to 300, and then starting up on the top for the second trip, 310, going all the way around to 600. So I think that's really the most accurate way to test your skill, because the other one, which you're only going to go around 1 time, it's in fragments that are smaller. But in this one, Probably the same strength is going to take it all the way around and into the second category. So you're really getting a very precise type of measurement on it. The bad part about this is when you hit it, that'll spin so fast, people don't even see it go around the first time. It just goes around on the thing. And they're so busy because they hit it and they were tough that they don't recognize that. But the other people who were playing did. Now, the Zamperlas, compared to the computerized games today, typically don't get played as much right next to each other. Isn't that interesting? Why? It doesn't make sense. Because people have to have the artificial feeling of greatness. Okay, back in the day, I'll explain this like rifle games. When I was a little kid in the 60s and you tried to play a rifle machine in the arcade, you played it over and over until you learned how to play the machine. You tried to learn how to hit the targets, and you had to be pretty precise. Over time, they made it so you didn't have to really hit the target. If you were close, you hit the target. Well, that's not really playing the game. The game was a game of skill, but in today's world, they don't want to really hit the target. They just want to aim in that vicinity and hit the target and think that they're great. So it's the same thing with the punching bags. The computerized algorithm will make them feel like they're stronger than they really are, because if they play the Zamperla, it's really going to tell you the truth. And they don't want to know the truth. People don't want to know the truth. So the moving finger like an analog clock, also, you would be surprised how many people cannot tell time on an analog clock. If they had a wristwatch and they looked at it, they wouldn't be able to tell you the time. They can only tell you digital time. Really? You don't know how to read a clock? They really don't. People really don't know how to read a clock. So I've had people stand there and they'll tell me, well, what's my score? Well, the finger's pointing over here. Oh, what do you mean? That moves? Yeah, so that's the world we live in, the Zamperlas. And you know what's always good? They're full of grease. See, now I've got grease all over my hands, and this is embedded in there good. This is why I didn't like auto class, you know, when I was in school, you know, auto shop. Anything you touched inside the engine, you're done for the rest of the day. You go to history, you got, you know, black finger marks on your history test. That's the way it is. So the older games are mechanical. They have oil, they have grease, it's really moving. You know, newer games, oh, the computer, you don't even know what it's doing inside those chips. This is the way it is. But this is the Zamperlas. I love them. Oh, look, I was smart enough to draw some diagrams. You can't see too closely. This is secret diagrams. But these are my diagrams for the modifications that were done on the machines, because I often use the same color wire. Did you see that back here? It's all purple wire on this one. It happens to be what I have available because I'm not manufacturing it for other people, where I'm using a red for positive 5 volts and a black for negative, and the yellow was the 12 volt positive. I mean, really, I'm doing it. I'm the only one servicing it, so I can tell you what each wire is supposed to do. And I even have my little diagram so that when I get old and feeble and I can't figure it out by myself anymore, I can actually look at my notes that I made for myself at one point. Isn't that fun? I can tell you one thing, moving these, you better be strong. You better, because these are really, really heavy. They weigh at least twice the weight as the computerized games, and they are heavy too. So you better be ready if you're gonna go pick up a Zamperla, because they're big, they're strong, they're heavy, and you're gonna get your workout before you hit your first bag. So I hope you had fun, because I am sweating to death. There's actually water on my glasses here, dripping from sweat. The sacrifices that are made just so you can see all this great stuff on the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Hooray! We'll see you next time, guys. Bye.